So the simplest approach for Web API, since it's normally written in conjunction with ASP.NET MVC or ASP.NET Web Forms, is to simply piggyback on ASP.NET Authentication. Let's see how that works. If we run our application, the default application is going to include the ability to register or log in. So there's a security system built in for users to use the actual website. And that's what we are talking about, the ASP.NET Authentication. It may be as simple as we want to allow the API to work if the user is authenticated. If you're simply using an API for your own website, this is probably good enough because you can see if they're not authorized to simply forward them to the login page to force them to log into the system. So without being logged in, I can simply go to the APIs we've defined because we really haven't secured them in any way. So if I go look at, let's say, diaries, I can see the diary, and this is the diary that we've kind of hard-coded to be my diary for this particular day. But if we go over here to the controller, and let's go to the diaries controller, I can add a built-in attribute called authorize. And this is to say that this diary requires authorization, and authorization implies that it also requires authentication. Let's build it. And now that I have authorized, it's going to fail because it says this has been denied. Why has this been denied? It's been denied because I'm not logged in. If we look at this in Fiddler, we can see that it's returning as a 401 or an unauthorized exception. That message we're seeing in the browser happens to be the message that we're sending back to the browser to show us. But more importantly, we're getting this 401 unauthorized. Because we're piggybacking on it, now that we're setting it as authorization, we could go ahead and log in with a known user, like me. You can see now that I'm logged in, it has a log off button and a hello, Shawn, so I can go ahead and look at my account. But if I had pages that needed it, I could now go to user diaries because I'm authenticated by ASP.NET already. So one approach here that's pretty common is to support the forms authentication in ASP.NET, and then inside your JavaScript code, simply look for 401s, and if you get a 401, forward over to the known login page. This isn't always appropriate because we're going to want to support user authentication from other places like apps and devices where they're not always going to be sitting on our website. And in that case, this doesn't work at all. You're not going to want to have them send these credentials into some API call that gives them a cookie that they try to insert into the browser for them. It gets really kind of weird and sticky, especially for non-Microsoft clients that aren't used to the way forms authentication works. So we're going to explore some of those ways in a minute. But one of the interesting things here is in looking at something like the API for diaries, we are looking at a specific user's diary. And we had hard-coded my name. But if we go back to Visual Studio and let's open up our security class, services, identity service, we were simply returning this hard-coded name. Instead, we can simply go to thread, which is in system.threading, and look at current principal, and the identity of the current principal. This is going to look at who the current person logged in is, if any, and name. Now, thread.currentprincipal.identity are all going to be valid even if someone isn't logged in, but in this case, the name will include the username of who is logged in. And in fact, if we refresh this, it will actually show us this because Shawn Wildermuth is the username I logged in with, and that happens to be the key in the sample data we're using. But let's go back and log off and register. Actually, I think I just need to log in. I've created this account already. S. Wildermuth, a whole different user. And so we can see we're now logged in as S. Wildermuth. And if we go to that same API, it's going to be an empty array. Now, why is this? This is because the database doesn't have any record of S. Wildermuth as a user. And so when it looks for diaries under S. Wildermuth, it's getting it from this thread.currentPrincipal identity name. It's getting the name S. Wildermuth, that if you remember, let's go back to the diaries controller. When we're doing a get here, we're using the username from this identity service that we're being injected in order to get the diaries for that user. This is why we implemented the identity service earlier, so that we could use it as whomever the identity is for a logged in user. Regardless of which sort of authentication or authorization we were using, this identity inside the current thread will always work.